This is the E of Real Estate. My name is Rene Stevens, and I'm your host today. And my guest, which I'm very fortunate to have again, is Dr. Ibrahim Karim. And it's our second interview. In the first interview I gave already, I thought a brief summary of your CV, and you thought already, oh, this is a big thing. So I shortened it to one sentence this time.
It's good, yes, we don't need too much.
No, people can look it back and then they know. So Dr. Ibrahim Karim, the founder of BioGeometry, is a truly Renaissance man who combines science and spirituality in a practical and applicable way for daily life situations. And when I use your own words, it's even shorter, you are the doorman.
Yeah.
Maybe you can say something later on to that.
Yes.
Yeah, as I said, I'm very excited to have a second interview with you, especially after this really masterpiece you have written, Hidden Reality. This is the book. And in this podcast, again, I would like to explore your insights about the evolving story of subtle energies and how they can be applied in daily life, and specifically in the built environment. After our first podcast in 2019, I got really inspired, and I did the foundation and advanced training in biogeometry with Chris Attar.
Now you're part of the biogeometry family.
Exactly. The original plan, by the way, was to have a classroom training, because that was the only option then, in Malta in March 2020. And I was there a few days before because I wanted to visit all these nice power spots, the many power spots even in Malta. And then COVID hit. Boom. The whole training was cancelled and we had to wait. And then, but it was a good thing, because in 2021 it became online because COVID was still terrorizing all of us. And my wife was also inspired because we had a chat with Chris, and he was so convinced that, wow, I also want to do this. So we did it together. As I said, I ordered your latest book, Hidden Reality, at the first opportunity. So that was the first few days of January this year. And indeed, it's a great achievement, condensing 50 years of research and discoveries into about 600 pages. And the book I started reading, the book gives the reader a journey into the inner wisdom and science of biogeometry. While reading, I felt as if I was pulled into uncharted territory of subtle energies and life force. Because after almost every chapter, and sometimes even after one page, I had to pause and to contemplate what I was reading. This is really something. And maybe that is the doorway you are referring to so many times, that somehow I got caught in that doorway. So the reader should take certainly his or her time for reading it, and probably read it several times to grasp the depth and profound wisdom of it. So Ibrahim, you are most welcome in this show. And start a little bit lightly. After I did those trainings by geometry, and I tell my friends and people about it, many people ask me the questions, and I can give an answer, but I would like to hear your answer. That is biogeometry similar to the ancient tradition of Chinese Feng Shui and the Indian Vaastu? And how is it related to sacred geometry?
Yes, I think that's the question that everybody's asking.
Yeah, that's the first thing before we dive into it. Yeah.
But to start with, I'd like to thank you for inviting me the second time. And I'm happy to see you again. It's been a long time since our first podcast.
Yes.
Now, let's start with Feng Shui and Vaastu. Feng Shui and Vaastu are based on ancient building traditions, like ancient traditions of architecture. Like you can find everywhere in the world, every country has its own traditions of architecture and canons that go back thousands of years. So the Feng Shui and Vaastu are related to the traditions of certain areas. So they are based on ancient sciences, but they are tailored to their areas. For example, if you take in Feng Shui, you're speaking about staying away from the north and opening to the south. And when you go to Vaastu, it tells you, no, stay away from the south, open to the north or northeast. So that shows you that although they're very similar traditions, but then the rules are different because the locations are different. Feng Shui in South China, where you have the plains, relies on orientation, while Feng Shui in the north, when you have the mountains and all that, relies in the form school. So these are ancient traditions of building. To understand them, one has to understand the culture behind them, and they cannot be taken from one place and put to the other without knowledge. I mean, you're an architect and I'm an architect. We know, most of the things in all those traditions have their base in architecture. And we know that whenever we go to a new geographical area, the whole analysis, environmental analysis is different, and we have to take that into consideration in our buildings. So it's the same thing with Feng Shui and Vaastu. There's the location, the geographical location, and then there's something else. Ancient traditions do not address the problems of modern technology. And that's our worst nightmare today, is the problems of modern technology. So they do not address it. So let us take sacred geometry, the difference between sacred geometry and BioGeometry. Sacred geometry starts from the quantitative aspect of proportions based on one proportion, which is basically the golden rule, 1 to 1.6 and all that. But the way they see sacred geometry today and base it on one rule, which is very good, the proportion of evolution and all that, for us architects, it lacks something. In ancient times, they used to look at architecture as frozen music. Mm. You know what Goethe said? He quoted this ancient phrase from ancient Egypt: architecture is frozen music. Yeah. What does frozen music mean? The proportions of music are actually the proportions of creation. Because when you take a rope and you turn it, it starts going into certain proportions and then repeats itself. So Pythagoras in his work, he said the musical notes actually puts certain proportion, using certain proportions, enter into resonance with the divine mind. So the proportions of music, you could actually be in tune with the mind of creation, because those same proportions, they are the proportions of creation. When creation divides and divides, Tools does it in those proportions. So architecture, which was mainly centered in certain earth power spots, had to somehow connect to the divinity, connect to creation. So to connect to creation, architecture had to follow all those proportions that you have in music. Now, with time, most of that knowledge got lost. So they reduced it to one proportion, which is the golden mean, because it's a very exciting proportion. That it's a proportion of evolution that keeps evolving to larger numbers and all that. So they got all excited about it. But if you look, for example, at what Hans Kayser, who revived ancient harmonics, universal harmonics, he revived science, not musical harmonics, but the holistic science of harmonics, how things are related harmonically to each other. He wrote something. He said, modern architects influenced by sacred geometry are trying to compose a symphony with one note, with one proportion. And he said they should bring in all the other proportions to it. But sacred geometry has another aspect to it. Sacred geometry translates the invisible, formless qualities of energy on several levels. It translates them into geometrical figures. So by visualizing those geometrical figures or drawing them, you can actually connect to those invisible qualities. But the thing is, sacred geometry, when you use it in design, you are using it to promote a certain harmony in your design. Now, biogeometry is a different thing, because sacred geometry here, you're starting from quantitative aspects like the Fibonacci series and all those things. They're mathematical things. So, for example, if you take the Fibonacci series as an example of sacred geometry, you have a mathematical relationship. And that's the whole idea of a series. I mean, if you make any series, there should be a mathematical relationships between the numbers. So that's what we know as series, because series we think always from the quantitative side. Now, to understand the difference, let's look at a biogeometry series. A biogeometry series starts 16, 19, 28, 34, 43, and so on. The numbers are totally unrelated. You do not have any mathematical relationship between the numbers. Because here, we are not speaking about a quantitative series that should have mathematical relationship. A qualitative series should have different relationships. The relationships here should be qualitative. So in a qualitative series, all the numbers interact with the environment to produce a certain quality. And this is the quality we find in sacred power spots. So the biogeometry series is composed of numbers that all have the same quality that of sacred power spots that we call in biogeometry the BG3 quality. So this shows us the difference between looking at the world qualitatively and quantitatively. So sacred geometry strives to achieve harmony in design through quantitative steps. Quantitative leading to qualitative. Now, biogeometry is a science based on universal, not just universal harmonics, but universal multidimensional harmonics, where everything in the universe is in resonance together. And when you speak about resonance, you're speaking about qualitative information exchange, because resonance means information exchange from both sides. So we have here qualitative information exchange. So biogeometry is a science of quality. So if you look, for example, at right brain, left brain perception, left brain perception is the analytical, quantitative, mathematical aspect that sees the universe. And through it, it strives to reach the qualities of the right brain. But it's mainly a left brain perception, even though it's very artistic, it produces lots of things, but it produces them through calculation. Now, the opposite is biogeometry. Biogeometry is a completely extrasensory right brain science. It is based on the intellect of the mind. Not of the intellect of the mind, sorry, it's based on the intellect of the heart. Because the intellect of the mind sees only 1% of reality, because our senses are only 1% of the total vibrational absolute reality, let's say. So our sensory perception is limited to a very, very small part of absolute reality, which is our sensory universe. It even creates our sensory ego. Our ego Rene and Ibrahim are a result of this sensory information. But this sensory information is, let's say, a secondary aspect of life. It's not primary. First of all, because it's only 1%, and life includes the whole 100%. So why do I say it's secondary? Because forever, for this world to emerge, you have to have senses. Okay, for the senses to emerge or to start working, you have to have life. Blood should flow to your brain. And when blood flows to your brain, then the senses are activated. But that means that the sensory perception of the world is secondary, because the body has to be alive first. Mm-hmm. Your heart should beat, the whole digestive system should work, and all that. Okay, where do the laws of life in your body come from? They cannot come from the sensory world. They come from the absolute, from the 99%, the absolute. So it's actually the absolute that brings life into your body. And then as a second stage, it produces the limited sensory perception that we have. So the heart and right brain do not work with the senses. The subconscious is extrasensory. So in a way, it is very flexible in relation to space and time, because space and time are products of the senses. The way we see them, linear time is a sensory perception. So the heart inside sees the whole universe as a unity. It doesn't see the quantitative aspect. And that is why when the ancients spoke about ancient harmonics, where every part of it was in resonance of other greater parts, so the whole universe was one harmonic unity. This was far beyond the possibilities of time and space and the perception of the mind. So we needed, in order to understand the laws of subtle energy, which subtle energy is the wider aspect. The sensory perception is only a very small part, like we said. Subtle energy is from 0 to infinity, is the whole vibration absolute. So in order to understand the subtle energy and this relationship, we needed the new physics.
Yeah, I think there, when you look at it very much on the surface between sacred geometry and biogeometry, that you would say, well, sacred geometry is about proportions, about beauty, aesthetics. That is not something from the mind, that's something from the heart, beauty. I think there is the misunderstanding that biogeometry is actually much, much, much more, as you just explained. And it's taking all the other things outside the senses into the picture as well.
Yeah, you know, biogeometry, the difference between both is that sacred geometry is a way of creating beauty. Mm-hmm. Because when you get the quantitative and start producing numbers that are in relationship to each other, that means proportions, you're stepping into the world of quality, because you're producing proportions. So sacred geometry deals with quality, deals with beauty, deals with harmony, but the path is different. The path to harmony is through quantitative, from quantitative to qualitative. Now, biogeometry, the difference is it's a science of life force, of living energy. So a science of life force, of living energy, starts with the qualitative, because the word biogeometry, bio means life force, geo, earth, metry, measurement. So biogeometry here deals with life force. And life force is the actual background, subtle energy that actually, like a big stage on which is the cradle on which all type of creation occurs. So when we speak about subtle energy, the word is not really descriptive. Subtle energy is part of life force. And the word life force, the word life means it contains emotional, mental, and spiritual levels that actually govern life, because that is life force. So you can call the background subtle energy. If you go into it, it is actually the subtle energy contains or is part of the greater aspect of life force that imagines all creation in it. Now, this life force is the main aspect that we deal with in biogeometry, is how to interact with life force and then how to use life force in a practical way to solve the problems of modern technology. So biogeometry here is a practical science that solves problems of modern technology. Sacred geometry is not here to solve problems of modern technology because it was, let's say, in the Renaissance period or in the ancient periods, there was no modern technology to solve. So that's the difference. Plus, if you enter into right brain perception, if the physics of quality that deals with so many multidimensional qualitative aspects, it opens up a dimension that is really fascinating. And you can do wonders with it because if you understand it, it is practical. Imagine this life energy runs every function in your body. And if you look at this background life force, it doesn't only run your body, it runs the motion of the planets. It runs the motions in the universe. I mean, why are the planets turning, for example? And why are they going around each other? There must be some force in it. You say, okay, the gravity and whatever it is, still, but there is, behind all those things, there's a universal order. You feel order, you feel the solar system is governed by a higher mind, by an order. So life force runs everything in the universe. It runs, it's the fuel that we use to move, to grow, and all that. So it is actually the potent, divine, universal mind with the spiritual, mental, emotional, and lower aspects that is what we call life force. So we deal with life force biogeometry, restores the life force in everything that we deal with. The problems, when we analyze problems that we have, those problems always go back to a sort of depletion of life force. I'll give you an example of depletion of life force. That's why I say modern technology. We are now speaking all the time of climate change. Climate change can cause heat and it can cause so many problems. And we are focusing in climate change on gases, petroleum gases, things like that, that come into the atmosphere. Okay, they promote a bit of heat, but if you want to look at a problem, look at not one aspect, look at all this aspect. Otherwise, you'll never be able to understand it or master it or something like this. So they concentrate on oil and oil gases and things like that. This is because science starts becoming political. I mean, yeah, it becomes political. We want to do something against oil-producing countries, so we concentrate on climate change, oil, gases, and all that. But okay, they have a part to play in climate change, in global warming, but it's only a small part. And now we say we want to make everything electric instead of cars should go electric. Everything should go electric, and this will solve the problem. Now, I look at it from biogeometry, means I'm looking at it from the life force point of view. Now, any electromagnetic wave that moves will produce heat. Every child knows at school. So imagine an age of information technology that is filling the atmosphere every day with more and more and more waves, electromagnetic radiation. This is the main cause that produces heat. So you think you're escaping from oil to go to electricity when electricity is actually the major culprit in global warming. Now, what happens when waves move and they produce some heat? Heat produces dehydration of systems. When you heat them up, they dehydrate. Now, life force is stored in humidity, in water. So when you dehydrate a system, it loses life force. And today, you see that a huge problem of dehydration. You know, you can drink 10 liters of water every day. You will still need to put moisturizing cream on your skin because it will still dry. How come I'm drinking so much water? Why am I dry? You know, our grandparents were not like that, but we have to always protect our skin now. We have to protect that because everything is drying up. So all life systems on Earth are drying up. And when you have life force is in water, that means there's a depletion of life force in all living systems on Earth. And this is a big problem. Depletion of life force means depletion of immunity, lowered immunity. Lowered immunity means parasites, viruses, pandemics, and all what we have. So I'm not saying that we cannot solve it, but I'm saying if we need to solve the problems of modern technology, we should look at them in their whole form, not one aspect, and then we go switch everything to electricity in smart cities, artificial intelligence, and whatever. You're going so much into electricity, and maybe in 100 years from today, you will look back the same way you look now at the age of coal industry, petroleum oil. 100 years later, you start to say, oh, it's harmful. Now, we don't have another 100 years to discover that electromagnetic radiation is harmful. So our problem today is restoring life force. Any product of modern technology that does not interact with life force becomes separated from nature. So now all our products do not have life force in them. They are, because we don't understand life force. So we're producing dead products, you know. They do not breathe in and out and interact with nature. They are dead products. So imagine modern technology is putting dead products in the body, in the living body of the Earth. So it's like putting tumors. With time, you're killing the life force of the Earth. Now let's look at electromagnetic radiation. Do we cancel it completely? No, it's our whole information age is built on it. So let's look at it in a different way. When the Earth has its own electromagnetic fields, they are part of life force. The electromagnetic fields of the Earth are part of our life force, and we cannot live without them, you know, they are part of life force. So we reached with our minds ways to amplify them in modern technology while rubbing them, because we don't understand life force, we don't understand those, we produce electromagnetic radiation that is actually depleting life force. When nature is giving us one that actually increases life force, you see. So we should ask ourselves a bit, we should learn from nature. Where are we going wrong here? Why are we depleting everything of life force? Now, biogeometry is here to restore life force, to restore it in electromagnetic radiation, to restore it in everything. The ancients didn't have electricity, but in every aspect of their life, in every aspect of architecture, monuments, and all that, they felt the need to draw in life force. When they built the first menhir on a sacred power spot, it was for the vortex that connected to life force. So the temples in ancient times, they were put in sacred power spots to connect to life force. Because when you connect to life force, you have healing, you have a sort of oracles where you have all kinds of life force attributes coming into you. So they knew, the ancients, although they didn't have the problems of modern technology, but they knew that without amplifying life force here, you cannot build a healthy civilization if life force diminishes. So
when I may interrupt you, that is a nice bridge to another point that I wanted to discuss with you.
Please do, yes.
You said that indeed that the ancients were aware about the life force, that they used those sacred power spots to bring in life force in their direct surroundings, even their communities. I read and learned that you can, with a very small shape, you can influence a very big shape. For instance, just a tiny shape can maybe influence a pyramid in Giza or even a planet. So what about, yeah?
These are the laws of resonance.
Yes, exactly, resonance. So when you rediscovered this ancient science of resonance, wouldn't it be a possibility, because actually you used it already in Appenzell, what I remember, that you could influence about the whole valley of Hirschberg, about 10 square kilometers, when I remembered well, with a intervention. So what about when we would revive or reactivate those nodal points of energy lines? Wouldn't be that a counteract with all this electromagnetic smoke that is happening right now, so that the Earth does its healing itself?
You know, I'm in constant contact with the population in Appenzell and Hirschberg and the population of Hamburg and St. Gallen.
Yeah.
And we became one big family since I did those projects. Those projects now, when I go there, we reminiscence 20 years ago and things like that. But we managed to check every year or every 2 years, to check whenever 4G came in, 5G comes in and all that. We come and check the shapes are still active with electricity, because it doesn't really matter the frequency you're using or whatever it is. The whole idea is put the spiritual or life force aspects, put them back into the wave. Now, whether this wave is 5G, 6G, 10G, whatever it is, when you bring back the life force and infuse the wave with it, you have, I'll give you a very nice example here. You know, we said the proportions of music are proportions of creation. That means that the proportions of music actually resonate with life force. So even when you listen to music or when you play music, you're actually increasing life force. So imagine, now I cannot enter and tell them that in all electromagnetic radiation that we use in the age of information, that we should actually adhere only to the proportions of music. So all our electromagnetic radiation would be in a way in musical proportions. This would actually bring in life force, but you cannot change the industry on that level. So what we do, we go on the higher levels. We go on the emotional, mental levels and bring in life force into those systems. And when I go to Appenzell and Hirschberg there or Hamburg and St. Gallen, the thing that you notice most is not only that 60% of symptoms were reduced. This means that 60% of your medical problems are related to environment. Because if we work on environment, biogeometry is an environmental science, it's not a medicine. So when you see you work on the environment, you work on electricity, 60% of your symptoms are reduced, then we have an environmental problem. That is the problem where, for example, I was in a think tank a few years ago in Arizona with University of Arizona, Mayo Clinic, and different people there. And we were speaking about how modern medicine has given us so many things in the past 100 years, the achievements of modern medicine. For example, it raised our lifespan by about 20 years. It eradicated, through antibiotics, vaccines, all those things, it eradicated smallpox, tuberculosis. So many of the things can be attributed to the success of modern medicine. Now, when some of the medical aspects were showing that, somebody asked them, at what cost did you give us those 20 years? You're giving us an extra 20 years in our lives, but what quality? I'm living the last extra 20 years in chemotherapy and radiotherapy. And is this, I mean, the quality of the 20 years you gave us? So the answer was, when we reduced all known diseases and we found cures for them because we found the causes. We research the human body all the time, and every time we find the cause, we can cure a disease. But a new type of disease has emerged lately, and it is increasing all the time. And these are the diseases that we can only manage. These are what we call chronic diseases we can only manage. And these are the ones that have increased lately. So the other group we managed to cure, find cures, but there's a group that is increasing every day. We can only manage, we cannot cure. And these are, for example, high blood pressure, diabetes, things, all those things that we know everybody has some form of this. So my intake here, I told them, from my experience in working in the Swiss towns and all that, you cannot find solutions to chronic diseases because you cannot find the cause. And they agreed with me, yes, the day we find the cause, we will be able to solve them. So I told them, okay, then look in the right place. Don't look in the cause in the human body. Look in the cause in his environment. Because if you look in the environment, you'll find the causes. If you find the causes in the environment, you can cure them. For example, you have electromagnetic pollution in the environment. Usually, our mentality tells us that when you see any type of pollution, we should reduce it. That's a normal thing. You reduce it and solve it. But this new pollutant, which is electromagnetic radiation in the age of information, we're increasing it 100 times every year with new inventions and all that. So this is a pollutant that you do not want to acknowledge, or maybe because the industry is paying and all that, you do not want to go against them head to head. But this is one of the pollutants that is destroying the environment, and that is causing all those so chronic things. The other one, automatically, in order to increase shelf lives of things and all that. We use colors, we use chemicals and all that, artificial things in our food and drink and all that. So there's a chemical pollution. Now, why don't you go look there? But you cannot, universities will never face the industry. So actually, unless we go out to the environment and really look at it the way, find the way it's harming us and try to correct it, we will never be able to address chronic diseases. See, so this is where biogeometry comes in. This electromagnetic pollution, you cannot reduce, no way. So why not transform it? And this is what we do. Our work is going into those areas in Switzerland. And one aspect, we are using what we call the energy of shape. Now, let me introduce you to a new type of resonance. That is a new type of resonance, although resonance is qualitative, we look at it through quantitative aspects. For example, in music, every string that has double or half the length of the original string you hit will vibrate with it when you hit it. And that gives you the first level of resonance. That means it's the Do or the C repeating itself on the piano, because you look at it, it's very easy to see, they vibrate together. So there's the first law of primary resonance, 1 to 2. Okay. Then there is a secondary resonance here between the notes. So the 1 to 2 gives you those 7 qualities, but those qualities are not independent in the universe. So you have a secondary resonance between the notes. 16 types of resonances are sort of a very weak resonances in the background. We call background resonances that arise behind the notes. And those resonances, you use them a lot when you make musical instruments. You know, the secondary resonance gives you the soul of the sound coming out. You feel this background is so manipulated by the shape of the instrument to give each instrument a certain character. Now, here we're always still dealing with mathematical proportions between the frequencies. And we speak today, everything, if you go into any alternative science today, they always speak to you about frequency. This frequency is good for you, this frequency is bad for you. Frequency is only one aspect. Frequency, that doesn't tell you anything. So why stick to frequency? You know, give you an example. If I have a wave with a certain wavelength, let's say like between my 2 fingers, and then this wave, the same wavelength, I can have a wave not like this, or I can have a wave, a big wave like this. Now, if I do those 2 shapes, exactly the same length, but heights are different, I put them in water, they produce different types of disturbances. So the same frequency, you cannot speak all the time of frequencies. See, I go into meditation, I need the alpha frequency. I need the 7 beats per hertz. We're always thinking of frequency. An alpha frequency that is like this is different than another one that's like this. So you understand now that the wavelength alone doesn't tell you anything. The shape of the wave gives the quality. So we are affected by the shape of the wave. So if I have, you know, one of those massage machines that give a certain frequency like that for the muscles, and if it has a knob to increase or lower it, and you measure using biogeometry, it's the same frequency, but every time you increase or lower the intensity, you'll get a different quality of the wave. So let's say you want the secret energy, harmonizing energy of BG3, then keep turning and measuring, keep turning until you find the point that this frequency gives you BG3. Or you can get the knob and start every adjustment on the knob, you measure it, and then you can actually graduate the knob with all the qualities you need. And depending on the quality you need, you choose it. So, meaning that the total shape of the wave plays a role. Quality is the total shape. You can never take it from one aspect. Now, if we have a quality of a wave, that means its shape. That means it will resonate, enter into resonance with any wave that has the same shape. Now, the same shape, irrelevant of frequency, means we are not bound by any mathematical relationship. You can take a shape from the minute, increase it, increase it, increase it, at no special frequencies, nothing. Keep increasing it as much as you want. All the levels will be in resonance. So we have a new kind of resonance now. We have the resonance of shape. The resonance of shape is seamless, going through all vibrational levels. A seamless, let's say, interaction of information exchange through resonance from the smallest to the largest. So every shape, similar shape in the universe, however small, however big, are in communication. Your eye, as a spherical shape, is in connection with the body of the earth, connection with the sun. Your ear, the shape of your ear, is in connection with your kidney. It's the same thing. So you start looking at a new language now. The language of interaction of shapes. Shapes in nature interact together. They affect each other, similar shapes. So this resonance of shape is one of the basic laws in the physics of quality in biogeometry, because now, let's say I can take a very small shape and adjust it in such a way to interact with a big shape. Let's say I have a room that has proportions and it's not really the proportions that I like. Now, instead of changing the proportions of the room, I can start putting the proportions that I need in any small object, in any small shape, and put it in the room. Through resonance, it will fill the room with this resonance, and then I will have the quality of energy in the room will not be actually related to the shape of the room itself, but it will be related to the shape I put in it that has infused it with this energy.
Okay, so could you say that the shape that you put in is like a tuning fork then? Is that the right
like a tuning fork? Yeah. Yes. You know, I'll give you an example. If you are sitting in your room now, the room has proportions. Your computer has electricity. There are electromagnetic radiation in the room. So there are good things and bad things in your room. There's a certain energy quality, and your body reacts to that energy quality. So in this room, I might find your stomach a bit off, your heart a bit like this or that. You go in another room or another place, your biological system will react. So it will be in every space, your biological system will differ a bit, will react, because we are an open energy system, you know, we give and take. Now, if you are sitting there and imagine yourself in a forest or on the beach, just this thought of the beach, or this image of the beach or the place in your mind, although it's not a solid object in the room, just this picture in your mind, the energy of the room will be a copy of that mountain or that beach. So all of a sudden, you find your body reacting as if you were there. And this comes from just a thought. So a thought or a shape or something can affect the whole space. So when we go and want to work on a whole town, like Hamburg or Swiss, the houses are already built. I cannot change things in the houses, but I can introduce small shapes, put a small shape in every house or in every place, and then it will affect the whole house. Now there we go a step further. If I have to go in a large town and put a shape in every house, it's a lot of work and costs a lot of money putting shapes in every house there. So we use another trick. We put the shape on some carrier wave. So here electricity helped us in Hamburg. So instead of saying the mobile communication tower is harmful, no, I said, this is the perfect carrier wave for me. So I put my shape on it. So it will automatically spread through all the houses. That is as if I put my shape in every house. So I used it that way. And then in Hirschberg, I said, okay, now I'll do it differently. Instead of putting it on the tower, they asked me, they said, can you use another carrier? Because when you put it on the tower, some people think it was harmful and Ibrahim corrected it. We don't want this concept. So I said, okay, I'm going to use the earth energy.
Exactly.
Which is actually much better because the mobile communication, now I'm using natural energy. So I choose central points in the earth. I get my shape. I put it in a tube like this. And sometimes I put water in the tube to give the energy of life in there, close the tube and go in one center spot and put it in there. In Hirschberg, I came to a place on a hill in the center like that, and it had a house. This is the house that you see in every, on Swiss chocolate. On Swiss chocolate, they always have a small chalet and a little girl called Little Lisbeth, and she's carrying like that the milk and the cows in front of the house. So I went to Hirschberg and I actually found that house on the hill, and I found Little Lisbeth, the girl, but she was my age now. He said, yes, I'm not. I'm the same girl of the chocolate, Lisbeth, and this is the house that a famous painter there called Munster, he died a few years ago. He painted it, and they took that picture in all the Swiss chocolates. So I said, okay. I went in this house that's in the center. And then I chose 12 spots in the garden and put tubes in those connection points of earth radiation. I put the tubes and I told them, okay, now the house has a new role, not just being on chocolate. Now the house, and in their garden, they can protect them so people don't take them out and all. So we put them there. And the effect spread to a 10-kilometer radius of the Valley of Apples. It's a big valley, the hills in the middle, then you have a valley like that, and then the big mountains. The whole valley was harmonized. It was affected in the garden. And what actually did we do? We used those shapes to bring in, to channel life force. That's why I put the shapes on the crossings of Earth lines, because at a crossing, you get a vortex. So I put my shapes on 12 vortices, and I let my shapes interact with the vortices. So what do the shapes do? They bring in life force into the Earth pattern here. That is diminished by industry, by all those things, has been weakened, the life force here. My shapes restore the life force in the Earth energy. Just like, for example, your chakras in your body, they produce vortices that attract life force. So I can put a shape in your chakra to amplify your life force. So we did that. And then all of a sudden, we had all those things happening. Everybody felt much better, everything. And it's difficult for people to understand. So some people think, this is ancient Egyptian magic. They forget that I have a doctor's degree from the ETH in Zurich. No, they think at the moment, he's an Egyptian. It can't be. Then the television starts speaking about the miracle of Fembert, the miracle of Fembert. It's no miracle. So that's why today I looked back and said, when we were doing our last international conference in Victoria in Canada, and we had all our instructors were there. And they came to me and said, Ibrahim, every time we do special topics, we choose a certain topic and you go very advanced in that topic. And when we ask you things, you seem to have the answers. That means there's a lot of knowledge that you're not giving to anybody. Mm-hmm. You're just giving us methods, but you're not giving us the science behind all that. And then one of them said, well, I think that you should start thinking now, you're over 80, you shouldn't be thinking that you're going to live forever. And you should not think that you're going to go and take that with you and leave us without it. So why don't you put that science out there for us so that all the people who studied biogeometry have something to go back to. They have a solid physics in their hands. They don't have to come to me. So of course, when I supervise, I've been supervising PhDs in universities for the past 25 years. So there, of course, they understand parts of the science, but they tell me the same thing. Yes. You're giving, in every PhD, you're giving us new laws, new things, and all that, and they work. And the person gets PhD, but we want the whole thing.
Finally, you put it together in this book.
So I put it all together in this book, and that maybe this is a legacy I could leave. I put the whole science in the book, and now we're going to start, after the foundation advanced courses, I'm going to start now. This book needs 10 more levels. So we're going to have 10 new levels of courses that will take you maybe a couple of years to go through, but at least you have a solid science. I mean, when you study architecture, you don't study it in 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
No, of course not.
Same thing. If you want to understand this book, The Physics of Quality, then take your time. So we're planning it. But now you know what I'm doing? Once I publish the book, I want to take a rest a bit. I take a rest. I'll go maybe on the beach in summer or something. And by fall, by the end of the year, I start working again. You know, my children who also are all in biogeometry, you know them, and the instructors. When I told them I want to take some rest now, I'll go and have some fun. Don't ask me anything. So they said, you know what? You can start relaxing when you're 90. But until you're 90, don't come to us and tell us I'm going to have some relaxation or some fun of my own. But it's I'm happy at least that I managed to put this work. But like you said, every page of that book is a doorway. And when we do the course, the knowledge in this page of the book is a doorway to so much more knowledge that we have to teach. But you can't put it all in the book. It's parts because biogeometry is a practical science. So this is where we are today with that. I'm happy
I want to go back a moment to Switzerland, because thank you that you explained a little bit more background about what I was pointing at in my previous question about
Yes.
using earth energy lines. So you put devices in the soil, in the ground, that garden on the hilltop, and it reached about 10 kilometers. So suppose you would have put it in Stonehenge or in the Borobudur in Indonesia, or Giza pyramid or whatever, Avebury in the UK, would it have reached further with the same shape?
Of course, it would reach kilometers. You know why? When I went to Appenzell, I went to this house and I put the shapes in the ground. I created a power spot, and I created them using the crossings of the Earth energy grids. The harmony went for about a radius of 10 kilometers. The whole valley was covered. Now imagine if I do the same thing in an existing Earth power spot that's very powerful. Let's say the pyramid, the temples in Luxor, Stonehenge, Lourdes, things like that. It would probably harmonize the whole country, because you're in a very powerful world power spots. So it would do that. In Switzerland, by the way, the second project, the one in Hirschberg, was the prototype for a whole country project in Switzerland. And they gave me a contract to do the whole country of Switzerland. So I was going to choose the power spots in Switzerland and put things in it and get the whole country done easily. Unfortunately, too many political things entered into it. And at that time, I left for Canada. I didn't continue. But we had already planned with the government to use this concept of putting it in the earth and certain things to do all of Switzerland, the whole country.
What you did in Switzerland, or what you made a quotation for in Switzerland, was for a specific task to, how you say, mitigate the harmful effects of those mobile towers.
But it was not mobile towers, just mobile towers. And that is what really made Swisscom write an article that my physics, the physics of quality, was correct physics, because the way I addressed it, I said I'm not dealing with the mobile communication, because all electromagnetic radiation, mobile communication, high tension lines, every electricity, all the industry, they interact together with the Earth radiation, create a scalar background. And it is this background echo that we call electrosmog that is harmful. Now, who created it? Is it the mobile communication? Is it the industry? You can't tell. They are all resonating together.
Yes.
And they wrote that this physics of resonance and background energy and scalar waves, it seems to be the right, they said, Ibrahim's Karim's physics, it seems to be the right physics of quality. It's the right thing, because he is the only one who could solve the problem. So he knows what he's doing.
Yes.
And, some people thought I'm exonerating the mobile communication companies, saying they are not alone. Everybody, but in reality, it is all the sources enter into resonance together, and our life becomes stressful because of all electromagnetic sources.
Yeah. That's clear. Point taken. Again, back to those very powerful power spots, Stonehenge, the pyramids, all over the world. So there are theories that they are built by very, very ancient civilizations, maybe even from another planet, and that they formed a grid in the old days, and maybe still forming a grid, but it seems that some of them are deactivated. So what about when one of these power spots will be activated again and put in the right resonance with life force and spreading it all over that part of the world? Wouldn't that be something to consider?
Yes, you see, all power spots, big ones and small ones, are connected by secondary lines. You call them ley lines, like your chakras are connected by 3 nadis or 3 lines and all that. So power spots are connected with each other all around the world. They're connected with these lines. And in ancient city planning, you know, we are an architect, I'm an architect. This was the actual pattern of creating a town. You have, let's say, 5 power spots. You detect the connections between them. And you will find that the power spot energy flows between them in certain lines. You make those your main avenues. And the power spots, you put your most important buildings in them, like say, the temple, the courthouse, the hospital, and all that. So now you have a grid, several power spots, and the connective lines. This becomes the pattern on which you design your town plan. This was in ancient times. Today, of course, it's not like that. But it has been used lately by the Freemasons in the design, in the town planning of Washington, Paris, Rome, and Cairo. Those 4 cities have been planned with some of the ancient principles, not all of them because they were lost by the time, but they were planned that way. So activating the power spots is important because the power spots in your area are actually activating your own chakras in your body. They're activating your health. Now, when you come and go to a power spot and put electrical generators in it, or any other form of chemical pollution, something, you can actually disturb the power spots. Mm-hmm. I had a similar example. I'll tell you this story. In the 80s, 1985 or something, you know, we have the Temple of Karnak and we have the Sacred Lake of Karnak. Mm-hmm. While I was consultant at the Ministry of Culture in the 80s, we stumbled upon a project that was going to start with the United Nations, with the UNESCO, and it had $50 million at the time, which was a huge project, for the Lake of Karnak. So I looked at what they wanted to do, and actually they were transforming it with modern technology like a huge swimming pool. They switched the water source from natural to water from the Nile tap, chlorinated, filters, align it with ceramics so they could wash them. So actually, it's a huge swimming pool. I got mad. I told them, you know what you're doing? This is sacred power spots. You can't do that. The waters are streams of water running in the rocks. And in their crossings, they produce the sacred water. And when the ancients used to take the pharaoh's statue a certain time of the year and wash it there to resonate with the pharaohs, this is a sacred lake. And I gave them an example. I said, if I go to Chartres, the church there, and you have the well where you do baptism, if I disconnect it and connect it to tap water, so they said straight away, no, you can't do that. This is the sacred well of baptism. So I said, because the owners are still alive. The religion is still alive, but the ancients are not here. You don't understand. This is a sacred power spot. This water is a sacred well, sacred power spot. Now you come and put your electricity, your filters and everything, and you want to transform it into a swimming pool. The right thing in the power spot is to restore it. Mm-hmm. How do you restore it? You stay away from it, first thing. And then the second thing, try to find what is disturbing the power spots. Go around it. The underground water, if it's polluted, we go around it. Maybe there's a factory beside it somewhere. Maybe something is affecting the groundwater. So we stop the source of pollution and bring back the life to the lake. But forget about modern technology. It made a huge, I really made a huge problem with that project, and they were not happy at all with my intervention. But I stopped it and made them do it the old way again and restore the energy of the lake the way it should be. Same thing with every power spot in the world. Today, for the health of every community, every town that you have, you should nurture the power spots around you. The old churches, the old places, an old oasis or things like that. You should nurture these because your body is an open energy system. Those power spots are connected to your chakras, so they are your own health. Now, psychologically, you should have a certain relationships to the power spots around you. Go and sit there from time to time and all that. Here in Egypt, I like to go to all those ancient churches and sit in front of all that. When I go to Zurich, I go to Grossmünster. There's a nice power spot in front of the church where there's a tree. I go every day and sit there for 10 minutes, quarter of an hour. That means I restore my connection to the power spot. So every town, every village, every neighborhood, you can find old power spots somewhere. So we try to revive them, restore them. If we do that, the health of the community and even their emotional mental health will change dramatically once you restore the concept of the power spot in their lives. But today, what we're doing, we're just destroying all kinds of power spots everywhere.
Yeah, this is a very interesting topic, what you are touching on now. That yes, one thing is that we as humans, we should have that interaction and awareness about the power spot. It will help us when we are aware. But you also said, or in several readings and interviews, that even if you are not aware, the life force will has an effect on you, depending if it harmful or beneficial energy vortex is going there. It will affect you.
Yes, so, it will. But there's one thing. What I'm saying, aware. That means you should have the awareness of not spoiling it.
Okay.
That's because that's what you do today. You go on the power spot, you put a generator, you put some electrical device, you put some things. And what I'm saying, have an awareness that this is a power spot that I should not pollute it.
Yeah, again, there are two interesting things about this. That one is that all these famous power spots, almost daily, thousands of tourists are visiting them. So there will be an effect, especially because they're very powerful. But yeah, is the world really changing, or would it be even worse when they wouldn't visit that? There's another.
Well, the thing is, if you go, let's say, to a sacred power spot today, like Chartres. Okay, you go to a church, or Grossmünster in Zurich, or one of those churches. When you go in, there's a certain reverence. There's a certain religious ritual that you practice. It's a sacred thing, so you respect it. Now, today's power spots, like you said, thousands of tourists come every day. When they enter the pyramid area, or Stonehenge, or any of those temples, they are not aware that they're entering into one of the most sacred spots of humanity, that they should, at the entry, they should say a prayer, like they do in the church. What's the difference between Stonehenge and entering into a church or a mosque? You pray there, but you go to Stonehenge or the pyramids, and you throw paper in the ground or things like that. This is the problem. People should have reverence to those sacred power spots. We should teach them. When you go to a sacred power spot, say a prayer, say something. Tourism should understand that power spots is like a pilgrimage. It's like a religious thing. It needs a certain attitude.
Yeah, by putting a certain shape, maybe you can bring people in the mood of...
Yes, of course, we can empower the area with certain shapes.
So, and especially when it is a very strong power spot, you can not only the tourists that are coming there, but the whole country, as you said, maybe even, that they are more respectful for these life force aspects. It brings me to another point that it always puzzles me why there are always military bases around power spots.
That's something.
Because they know something, I think, then. Because why, especially that place? Because also Stonehenge, the whole area is military bases. Certain parts you cannot come.
Yeah, but I mean, this shouldn't be the thing. Military bases shouldn't be put near power spots.
Yeah, unless it is used as a carrier way for whatever.
No, I mean, they're spoiling. You know, the military things, they have an energy that will spoil the energy of sacred power spots. So it shouldn't be there. Yeah. I mean, and I mean, let's go back to thinking those bases near power spots, because thinking of alien contact and things like that come to those power spots. If you want to know who built the pyramids, or what civilization was in Egypt there, did aliens come, or did the people of Atlantis come and start the Egyptian civilization 9000 BC or something like that? Atlantis, okay, it's a legend. We don't know if it exists or not, but it's a legend coming from Plato and so on. But we have documents in Egypt about the whole history of the Egyptian civilization going back 33,000 BC. It is there. It's a chronology. For example, the chronology of the priest Manetton. He has a chronology that goes back 33,000 years. It is also written in stone in what we call the Palermo stone in Turin. I think they put it in Turin now, or in Palermo. I'm not in one of them. But it says, if you have the names of every king, his wife, his children, how many years he ruled and all that, for 33,000 years, then why go and look for other things when you have that? You see, yes, they say they usually go back to the ancient kingdom to about 3000 BC and say, okay, up to those dynasties, those kings, this seems plausible. That's Egyptian history. Okay, what about an era called Shamsuhor, 12,000 years before that? You have the name of every king, his wife, his children, what he did, and all that. It's all written there. They say, okay, but 12,000 years, no, we consider that mythology. Now, but before those 12,000 years of the Shamsuhor, you had 22,000 years or 23 of dynasties called the Netero. Now, the Netero, you have the name of every king, what he ruled, what he did, and all that. Oh, but that's going too far back. We will call that mythology. Yeah. So we have it in front of us on stone, on papyrus, but we don't want to acknowledge it. Okay, the story of Atlantis, I think, from my point of view, that there might have been a civilization in Atlantis, and when Atlantis started to sink with the tsunamis and all that, they all escaped. Now, the logic would be, when they escape, they would go to the nearest land.
Yeah.
That means they would go to Ireland or the UK. This would be where the Atlantean civilization should move and be there. Not go and travel down and then go into the Mediterranean, and even into the Mediterranean, go to the far end where Egypt is. Now, My theory is that the Atlantean civilization before 9000 BC and the Egyptian civilization at that time, there was in the north of Africa, the Egyptian civilization, probably in the south, there was another African civilization, I don't know. But I think there were trade routes, sea trade between Atlantis and Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
So when the problem started with the islands, they went to the place that they were already in doing commercial activities on. They knew the sea route because they could have gone to Morocco and stopped there. They didn't. They could have gone anywhere. Why Egypt? So I say the Atlantean civilization must have been in connection with the Egyptian civilization, which would make them avoid Europe, avoid all those countries, Africa, and then cross and go all the way to seek Egypt. So we should look at it that way. But who built the ancient Egyptian civilization? Some paper. They're called the Netero. These are the most ancient people 30,000 years ago. And history will prove every day the existence of those ancient nations, like the Homeric legends that spoke about Troy and all that. We used to say these are legends, never existed. And then Heinrich Schliemann comes and he discovers in his diggings all the gold of Troy under one of the temples in that area. And then all of a sudden now, the Greek traditions now of Homer are actually history.
Mm-hmm.
So same thing about the pyramids. And then there's one thing when you are speaking about the pyramids. When you say who built the pyramids, you are speaking about the last shape that you have in front of you. So you should ask yourself, who built the last phase of the pyramids? Okay, maybe King Khufu, okay, 3000 BC, built this last shape. But we know it could have been built on other earlier shapes and earlier shapes now. When was any of those ancient monuments built? If you really want to understand it, you should go back to the concept of power spots. Humanity started in the beginning, going to those power spots and putting huge stones, menhirs, or dolmens that looked like a gate. And now we know the earliest dolmens in Europe, they date maybe 50,000 years ago. Now, the dolmens are two stones with a stone on top like a gate, but all of them are sort of directed to the equinox. So you connect the power spots to the cycle of life.
Exactly.
So somebody 50,000 years ago, through their inner intuition, created this gateway connected to the power spots of life. Now, later on, they covered this gateway with earth. So it became a chamber. The dolmen became a chamber in an earth mound. And then it became a pyramid. Then, if you look at all the holy of holies in the world, the dolmen is the prototype or the archetype of all the inner chambers of all the temples and basilicas and all that, who are facing a direction wide, a bit arranged around the equinox, because those things change, but around the equinox. So the concept of having a certain chamber, and whether it's in the rock or built on it, whether it has earth on it, goes back thousands of years. Now, people were worshipping there. So if you look at the pyramid, maybe the pyramid mound wasn't a pyramid, but just a dolmen underground. And maybe later just another dolmen overground. And maybe they put some mud in it in the beginning, or earth. And then later on they took it away and put some stone. So it's an ongoing, so pyramids and ancient temples are an ongoing human activity that goes back far beyond the civilizations. That's how we should look at sacred power spots.
Yeah. That you triggered another thing now. What I want to ask you that. So these ancients, long time ago, they had a feeling that it is important to make so much effort to erase these structures and connect them and align them. So they were aware of something. You, in your books, you are writing about the big shift from the right brain to the left brain, and we forgot all these things. When I look at the moment, we are in a very turmoil situation in the world, especially the last 3 years.
Yes.
So could that be that there is a flux? Are we going back to the beginning, or so from left brain maybe back to right brain, or into a balance, or maybe a complete new phase of consciousness? What are your thoughts about that?
I think that today, to approach the modern human mind, you have to approach that mind through left brain perception, through the scientific way of thinking. If you start telling the modern scientific mind things that are totally right brain, okay, meditation, yoga, do those things, they take them as okay activities on the side, but they are not, let's say, part of the path of modern science. Now, how do you create a new shift? If you bring a science like BioGeometry, which is a qualitative science, now how do you bring it to them? How do you integrate it in modern science? Step one, find something, a problem they cannot solve. And then give them a new solid physics of quality. And then go and shock the scientific mind by solving what they cannot solve.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, you are shifting, their whole solid opinion of how they are standing on stable ground is shaken.
Mm-hmm.
Then they might look at why not bringing this science of quality inside our way of thinking? Why not integrate it with modern science? Because if this is the only solution to the information age, now you have two possibilities. There's a time bomb in the information age, electromagnetic radiation. Now, either keep going until the bomb explodes and civilization is gone,
Mm-hmm.
or be aware of the problem
Mm-hmm.
and try to bring in solutions to help you. By bringing in solutions like BioGeometry to help you, now BioGeometry has, the thing is, it's a transformational science. It goes into you. The moment you start applying it, it is reconnecting to the right brain again. So if BioGeometry manages to sort of make the left brain look or move its focus slightly to the middle, it doesn't have to go all the way to the right brain, we might enter into a new phase of humanity. We might have a new human being that is actually more advanced even than the ancients, because the new human being will be able to look with a very advanced scientific mind, but now he has a science that he can use to look into the subconscious with his very advanced mind. So he could create a new synergy of the brain that will create a new human being that is more advanced than the human being, than the ancient human being who was there before the great shift of the brain. Now, this is a dream.
Well, I would, yeah, you can call it like that, but it just need one person to think differently to change the world. You know the story about Newton, who saw an apple falling, but many people saw
Yes.
an apple falling. But he made a different connection with what he was seeing, and he changed the paradigm.
You know, this the story of in the epilogue of the book. My wife wrote a small piece like that, and she refers to the outsider. In every civilization, the outsider. The outsiders are the ones who really made shifts in humanity. The ones in the system, they make the advances, the slow advances. But total shifts come from the outsiders. But the outsiders are usually attacked, not accepted, and all that. So, and she refers in the epilogue to like the anecdote of Don Quixote, you know, going back, fighting the windmills. That's how we look at it.
Yeah.
But, and then she says, maybe there's a magic moment in time,
yes,
where such a change could occur.
Yeah, and again, the magic moment. The magic moment, maybe coming back to what we discussed earlier, those very powerful sacred power spots, putting in a little shape of bring the right mood in whatever, can make a shift. And let alone when you take several power spots and doing
the problem is with biogeometry, when you do regional big solutions, you should always work with the authorities. Because the problem is there is still a fear in many people of a new science that they don't know. Although I'm here, I've been supervising PhDs at universities in Egypt and Europe for the past 25 years. The science is out there. We're doing so many things, but still they look at biogeometry, you know, what is this science? Where is it coming from? What type of energy is he using? And that's many people are skeptic. What are those people using as energy? So
yeah, well, they have now a book. They can look it up.
Yes, but you go, let's say, if I go and work on an area, and this is not medicine. Some people are dying. Some people have cancer. Some people have things. And then the people say, oh, this person died when those people came and installed their shapes. You don't know. Or some fanatic would tell you those shapes are blasphemous. That's the shapes, the devil. But people say. So always, like in Switzerland, when I worked, I had a contract with the government.
Yes.
And so the television, the government, the newspapers, everybody was on board, and they were telling the people that we have to bring a solution that is not common, but this is the only thing. So you had the government with you.
Yes.
So whenever people tell me, for example, a very important application of biogeometry in the after-war areas, because the after-war areas have secondary radioactivity always from all those weapons. So many people contact me and tell me, can you please come and put things here to protect us from secondary radioactivity? I tell them, tell your government or get any official institution or any NGO or something to get that project accepted and then ask me to come and do it. Yes. But you cannot do something without permission, without us. And we have to respect that.
Yeah, of course. Another thing in this big transitional period I think we are in is that people get afraid. Actually, you are saying the same thing. People are getting afraid of new things that they don't understand. People were also once upon a time afraid of a car because it was not the same as a horse. And now we are talking about artificial intelligence, and of course, the impact is much greater than just one car or a few cars.
But you know,
but still, I can imagine that yeah, you can look at through lenses of fear, but you can also look through possibilities, because this artificial intelligence maybe makes us make less stupid decisions as humans.
Or it could destroy us. So
Yeah, it could be.
Let me tell you something about artificial intelligence.
Yes.
Artificial intelligence, with time, it will be much more efficient than the human mind.
Yeah.
So automatically, one day, it will not need us. I mean, if in running a smart city, the artificial intelligence in evaluating what happens every day, the time will come when this artificial intelligence will come to the conclusion that the weakest link that they have is the human being. And then it doesn't have emotions, conscious. The first thing it will do, get rid of the human being. So we have artificial intelligence will optimize things irrelevant of what it will do. It has no morals. It has nothing. So how do we make artificial intelligence work for us and not against us? First, we try to make it discern right from wrong. Now, this is very difficult. How can you make it discern right from wrong? But I give you some solutions off my head like this. Let us say you connect the system to some living thing, to a human being, to a plant, to something like this. Because we know that if it's a plant or even a normal plant connected to a lie detector, when something is false, it will always give a certain reaction. So imagine making an interface like this, a living interface to the AI of your computer, so that when the information comes in, there's a reaction of the system, and the reaction will detect good information from bad information, like a plant would do. So I'm not telling you get a human being and attach him to the computer, but you can interface, let's say with plants, with things like that, interface so that any living system, when interfaced with artificial intelligence, will detect a bit, will have some stress when things go wrong, and then it will evaluate things. This is a very crude way of bringing a first step of conscience to artificial intelligence, but it can be done. So another thing, we have to bring in, and that's more difficult, through this interfacing, find a biogeometry way in designing the whole system that brings in life force into the whole system.
Exactly.
And maybe I'm saying this, it will create, or it will, as we can say, it will humanize artificial intelligence, make it work for our benefit, not for its own benefit.
Yeah, it could be part of the bigger divine plan these humans are messing up all the time, and there's not really big progress in thousands of years. With artificial intelligence together, they can make that shift. Who knows?
Yeah, because
so it's not only fear. It can be just like energy in itself is not wrong. A knife in itself is not wrong, although you can kill somebody with it, but you can also make a sculpture with it, and the same goes with fire, and etc. So
yes, but what if artificial intelligence discovers that the humans are disrupting everything, destroying everything, and they're making wars, they're making this, they're making drugs, kills. What if the artificial intelligence, in its way to optimize, starts taking away everybody who does harm?
Yeah, but I go one step back. This artificial intelligence is developed by humans. It's not just falling out of sky. So maybe these humans were inspired by the divine spark to make this, so that in the bigger plan, it guides us.
But if you're when you're inspired by the divine spark, you should somehow bring in this inspiration in your work. We are inspired by divine spark to create electricity, and we mess it up. So when you are inspired to create artificial intelligence, when artificial intelligence decides to go against humanity, it is because it's doing in its program, it is self-developing, and then it is optimizing itself. And when it finds that there are people which have become a liability to the system, it will automatically put some program instead of the human being.
But
it's very tricky.
I agree fully with you. That is the thing. But I would also say there are humans, maybe even governments, who are doing a similar thing. That when you don't speak according to the official story.
Yes.
Same
thing. So the whole idea is how to bring the heart values, the laws of nature, conscience into activity, whether it is technical activity or even worse, human activity, government activity. Because if you do that, if you bring this harmonizing thing into government activities, we wouldn't have wars.
Exactly.
We would have eternal peace. So
maybe we could cover a last topic then about how we say it, excellence of actions. How do you call it?
Excellence of action. Yes.
I think that is also something our listeners can take away. What can they do themselves? Because, as we said earlier, it just could take one person to make a big change.
Let me take you step by step from what we were discussing to excellence of action.
Okay.
We were discussing sacred power spots, how sacred power spots have vortices, and those vortices bring the balance from the spiritual to mental and emotional. They balance all the lower levels. Now, then with time, humanity has developed every aspect of its life around sacred power spots. In modern times, we went away from that, and we have developed or we have stuck to the rituals, the ancient rituals that deal with power spots, but now under the hat of our modern religions. They deal, but if you go in detail into all religious ritual, you will find, although they will not admit it, you will find that they go back to the interactions with power spots in the earth or in the sky. All rituals are done like that, or the equinoxes, so you have the rituals. The rituals, because they interact with power spots, what they do is they actually fill your system with what we call BG3, or the harmonizing spiritual aspect of the power spots. Now, people stop there. They think, if I practice the rituals of my religion, instead of thinking that the ritual is a method of bringing the power spots into you, no, the ritual has acquired meaning of itself, and you give it cultural meaning, give it this meaning. So, and then you think it comes to a point where every religion thinks that its ritual is the religion. My ritual is different than other rituals, so the rituals have become the religion. In reality, the rituals are only ways, methods to bring the divine light into the system. Now, let's say the divine light now, through rituals, I have brought this energy into. So what? Bring it in. So what? What for? You have to bring it so that you interact in a certain way. This energy should go out and impregnate your actions to bring full harmony into it. Because as a human being, if you do a certain action and you only have 1% of the information, that sensory information, how can you, with 1% of information, bring harmony into 100%? There's no way. This is an arrogant way of thinking that with your mental capabilities you can do that. In reality, you can't. You should let the higher dimension, the 99%, come in and let them govern your action. Then your action now will bring balance not only here, but in all dimensions. Because we say through the resonance of shape, all shapes, all motions are shapes. They have multidimensional interactions. That means they affect all other universes, all parallel universes. Every action you do affects everything else. So how do I bring the 99% into my action? The 99%, when it's enforced through ritual, it goes into my heart intellect. You know, the heart has brain cells all around it. So it goes into my heart intellect or my right brain. Now, my heart intellect, how will the heart intellect govern the mental aspects, of govern your actions? The heart intellect is beyond time and space. And your awareness here is within time and space. So you need translation. So the laws of nature, the harmonizing laws of nature, are translated into values that appear to you through what you call your conscience. So your conscience is empowered by the sacred power spots through the rituals to bring in the laws of nature into action. And then now it's the 99% that is governing your action and not the 1% of your mind. The 99% coming in produces what I call excellence of action. So this is what we understand. And power spots, the interaction with sacred power spots in earth and the sky, play a major part because they empower your conscience, they empower your values. So the values would come into excellence of action. If you empower human values, you wouldn't have poor people around the world, you wouldn't have wars, you wouldn't have all that. I mean, imagine the billions and billions or trillions of dollars you put in weapons could feed all humanity, or could bring medicine to all humanity. You could eradicate sickness, you could eradicate wars, just by what you spend on weapons. So excellence of action should take you away from all that into really what matters. And this would create a new humanity. Without excellence of action, one day our civilization will just dissipate like all other civilizations.
Yeah, that's a wonderful summary of what we were free flow discussing in this podcast. Well, I thank you again very much for your time, Ibrahim, and
well, thank you, and
sharing of thoughts. We had a few hiccups when we probably started very sensitive topics.
Yes, my battery is running low now, so
yeah,
I'm saying bye-bye, and
yes,
and see you sometime somewhere in our third podcast.
Okay, that's a deal. Bye.
Listen.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
thank you.